A faint beeping echoed in the darkness, slow and steady, like the ticking of a clock that had been forgotten. Ethan Cole's eyes fluttered open, a heavy blur clouding his vision, his body feeling like stone beneath the thin blanket covering. He didn't know where he was, or even who he was for a moment. Only the sterile smell of recycled air and the soft hum of machinery reached his senses. Shapes slowly began to take form, and in the haze he saw a figure, tall and unmoving. Standing beside his bed, her skin was silver, catching the dim light and reflecting it softly. Her eyes, a strange mix of blue and violet, deep and unreadable, when she spoke. Her voice was low, trembling slightly. "Ethan," she said, as if speaking to a ghost. He tried to answer, but his throat burned, his lips were dry, and all that came out was a rough whisper. She leaned closer, her long hair falling over her shoulder like threads of light, and carefully placed a cup of water to his lips. He drank slowly, every swallow feeling like it scraped his throat, but the cool liquid brought a spark of life back to him. "Where am I?" he managed to ask. "You're safe," she replied, though her tone carried a weight, as if safe was a fragile thing that could break any moment. "You've been asleep for a long time," she added, her eyes glistening with something he couldn't quite name. Ethan tried to sit up, but his muscles refused to obey. His body felt thin and weak, like he hadn't moved in years. "How long?" he asked, forcing the words past his dry lips. She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor, her voice almost a whisper when she finally answered. 20 years, the words hit him like a punch. 20 years, gone, erased from his life, his mind scrambled, searching for memories. The last thing he could recall was a mission, a bright flash, alarms, and pain. Then, nothing, only the endless dark. The alien woman stepped back slightly, giving him space. Though she never turned away, her name surfaced in his mind like a forgotten song. "Leora," he said slowly, testing the sound. She looked at him with a faint, almost broken smile. "You remember," she murmured. Leora wore a faded uniform, its edges frayed, as though it had seen decades of wear. Her posture was straight, but there was an exhaustion in her movements. "Have you been here all this time?" Ethan asked, his voice shaky. "Yes," she replied simply. "I waited." The room around them was quiet, but worn, metal panels dulled, a thin layer of dust visible in the corners. This was no busy medical bay. It was a forgotten place. Ethan's gaze moved to the cracked screen on the wall, where faint text scrolled endlessly. "Life support readings? How? Is this station even still running?" he asked. Leora glanced at the screen. "I kept it alive, like I kept you alive." Her words carried no pride, only a quiet truth. Ethan felt a strange mix of gratitude and confusion. "Why?" he asked. "Why stay? Everyone else?" "They must have left." "They did," she said. "But I had a promise to keep." He wanted to ask more, but a faint sound cut through the silence, a short, rhythmic pulse. Leora turned toward the console, her expression shifting from calm to alert. She pressed a few keys, and the screen flickered, revealing a string of code. Ethan's eyes narrowed, recognition sparking instantly. "That signal." "I know it," he said, his voice suddenly sharper. "It's from the day of the accident." Leora's jaw tightened. "It's impossible," she said, almost to herself. "But it's here," Ethan insisted. "And if it's real, it means whoever attacked us might still be out there." The air between them grew heavier, the hum of the life support system sounding louder than before. Ethan tried again to move, his arms trembling with the effort. "I need to see the rest of the station," he said. "I need to know what's going on." Leora shook her head. "You're too weak." "I've been weak for 20 years. He replied. "I won't waste another day." She studied him for a long moment. her eyes calculating, and finally she stepped aside. "Then you should see what's left," she said softly, with slow, shaky movements. Ethan swung his legs over the side of the bed, his feet touching the cold metal floor. Pain shot through his muscles, but he forced himself to stand. Leora moved to his side instantly, supporting his weight without a word. They stepped out into the corridor, the lights dim and flickering. Dust floated in the stale air, and the once polished walls were scratched and stained. It felt like walking through the bones of a dead ship. Ethan's hand brushed against the wall, the cold metal grounding him. "This place." He murmured, "It's like a grave." Leora didn't answer, her expression unreadable. As they moved forward, the faint beeping from earlier grew louder, the same signal still pulsing. Ethan's mind raced with questions, but before he could speak, Leora stopped abruptly. Her eyes darted to the far end of the corridor, where a faint metallic sound echoed. It was the sound of something or someone moving. Ethan's breath caught, and in that moment, he realized his awakening might not be the end of his nightmare. It might just be the beginning. The sound in the corridor faded, leaving behind only the steady hum of the station's old engines. Ethan's heart was still pounding, but Leora urged him forward, her hand steady under his arm. "You'll understand soon," she said quietly, her voice almost lost in the still air. They walked through sections of the station that looked untouched for decades. Panels hung loose, lights flickered, and faint dust danced in the weak glow. Ethan felt a strange sense of loss, as if the place itself had been alive once and was now only a shadow of what it used to be. When they reached a wide observation deck, Ethan froze through the cracked glass panel. Space stretched endlessly before him. But it wasn't the beauty of the stars that held him still. It was the emptiness. The docking bays below were silent. No ships moving, no voices on the comms. Only stillness. "What happened here?" he asked, turning to Leora. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped toward a console and brushed away layers of dust from the screen. Old text flickered weakly, system reports dated years ago. "The others left," she said at last, her voice calm but heavy. "Left." Ethan repeated, "Yes. One by one, they gave up hope that you would wake. And they went back to their worlds." Ethan's jaw tightened. "And you stayed?" "I stayed," she confirmed. "Every day for 20 years, I watched over you." Her eyes met his, unflinching. "Do you know how many times the council told me it was pointless? How many times they mocked me?" Ethan couldn't find the right words. The thought of her here alone all that time cut deeper than he expected. They moved deeper into the deck, and Leora activated another screen. Static cleared to show an image of Earth, but Ethan almost didn't recognize it. The blue oceans were the same, but the surface had scars. Dark burns where cities once stood. "What happened?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Leora's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of sorrow in her eyes. "War," she said. "The alliances broke down. Worlds turned on each other. Humanity scattered into colonies far from the old home." Ethan stared at the image, the weight of 20 lost years pressing down on him. His friends, his crew, his family gone, or worse. He turned away from the screen, his mind reeling, and this station. Why wasn't it taken apart? "Because no one wanted it," she said simply. "Too far, too old, too quiet." Except for me. Ethan thought of the lonely beeping that woke him, of the faint hum of the engines. She had kept this place alive for 2 decades. The more he thought about it, the more impossible it seemed. "How did you manage repairs? Food? Power?" he asked, her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Very carefully, but then the smile faded. "Sometimes I thought it would be easier to let the systems fail, to stop waiting. But then I'd remember your face." Ethan's chest tightened at her words. He wanted to thank her, But the signal still pulsing in the background gnawed at his thoughts. That transmission. "You didn't tell me everything," he said. Watching her closely, Leora didn't deny it. "It matches the enemy's code from the day you were hurt," she admitted. Ethan stepped closer. "So they're still out there, maybe," she said. "Or maybe it's a ghost from the past, a trap, a trick." Ethan shook his head. "We can't ignore it." Leora's gaze sharpened. "We can if it keeps you safe." He almost laughed at that. A dry sound. Safe. "I've been asleep for 20 years. Safe is meaningless now." They argued quietly, voices low, but tense. Finally, Leora sighed. "If you really want answers, you'll need to see the old mission logs, but they're in the restricted archive." "Restricted?" Ethan asked. She hesitated when the others left. "I sealed parts of the station to keep them from scavenging what we still had, including the logs." They started toward the restricted section, but halfway there, the station's lights dimmed. Suddenly, the hum of the engines faltered, and for a moment, there was complete silence. Then, soft vibration passed through the floor, the unmistakable feeling of something docking. Ethan's pulse quickened. "Someone's here," he said. Leora's hand went to her side, and Ethan noticed a small weapon there. She didn't draw it yet, but her stance changed. Ready, alert. They reached a maintenance hatch, and Leora guided him inside, closing it behind them. "Where does this lead?" Ethan whispered. "To the maintenance tunnels, hidden from the main corridors." She replied. Crawling through the narrow space, Ethan could hear faint footsteps above, slow and deliberate. "They're searching." Leora murmured. "They." Nowhere to look, the tunnel ended at a small service room, cluttered with old tools and broken panels. Leora moved to a control panel in the corner and began typing quickly. "What are you doing?" Ethan asked, checking the internal sensors. She said. The screen lit up, showing 2 heat signatures moving through the station. "Not many," Ethan noted. "2 is enough," Leora replied. "If they're the same as before," Ethan stared at the blinking red dots on the screen. "Before what?" he asked. Leora's fingers stilled on the console, her eyes dark. "Before they destroyed your ship and left you to die." The words sank in like ice. Ethan didn't speak. Not yet. His mind was already moving, planning whatever these intruders wanted. It was tied to the past, and he would find out. But first, they had to survive the present. The faint glow from the console cast shadows across Ethan's tired face. He kept staring at the blinking red dots on the screen. 2 intruders, moving steadily through the station like they already knew its layout. Leora's fingers moved over the controls, locking doors behind the figures, slowing them down. "They're looking for something," she murmured, her voice tense. Ethan's gaze flicked to her. Or someone. Her eyes didn't meet his. And that hesitation was all the confirmation he needed. "They know I'm awake," he said quietly. Leora's jaw tightened. Maybe? Or maybe they were always coming. Whether you woke or not. Ethan leaned back against the cold wall, closing his eyes for a moment. The images in his mind weren't clear. Flashes of fire, alarms, shouts, then pain and darkness. He remembered the mission briefing 20 years ago, the rush of leaving the docking bay, and Leora standing next to him in her polished armor. He remembered the pride in her eyes before everything went wrong. "That signal we picked up," Ethan said, opening his eyes. "It's not just some random transmission." Leora froze for a heartbeat, then gave a small nod. "It's the same encryption the enemy used the day of the attack." Ethan's breath came slow. "Which means they're back, or they never left." A soft metallic clang echoed through the ventilation shafts, both of them turning toward the sound instantly. "They're closer," Leora said, typing another command to seal off a junction. The dots on the display changed direction, moving toward the restricted archive. Ethan felt a sharp pang in his chest. "That's where the mission logs are." "Yes," Leora replied. And that's why we can't let them get there. Ethan's hands curled into fists. Then we need to move now. You can barely stand, she reminded him. But Ethan's eyes were set with a stubborn fire. I've been lying still for 20 years, Leora. I'm done watching from a bed. She didn't argue further. Only handed him a small, compact weapon from her belt. It felt heavy in his hands, not because of its weight, but because of what it meant. Leora slipped through the narrow service door first, Ethan following as quietly as his stiff legs would allow. They moved through the tunnels, the dim emergency lights guiding their steps. Occasionally, the sound of boots on metal echoed faintly above, reminding them the intruders were not far. When they emerged into a maintenance corridor, Ethan paused, his eyes falling on a familiar bulkhead. I know this place, he said. Running a hand along the cold surface, Leora glanced at him. You should. You designed it. He blinked, memory surfacing long nights in engineering, the hum of power conduits. Leora watching him with quiet curiosity. And then the day everything ended, a sudden breach, flames roaring through the passage. The sound of metal screaming as the hull buckled. He remembered Leora pulling him back from the collapsing walkway. The heat burning his skin, and then nothing. Ethan stopped walking, his voice low. Tell me what really happened that day. Leora kept moving. We were attacked. You already know that. Not enough, he pressed. Why were we targeted? What were we carrying? She hesitated. But only for a moment. You were carrying it, she said finally. Her voice steady, but her eyes shadowed. Ethan frowned. Carrying what? Something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. Something they would kill for. Before he could demand more, the corridor ahead flickered with sudden light, the glow of a welding torch cutting through a sealed door. The intruders were here. Leora grabbed his arm, pulling him into the shadows of a side alcove through the half-open hatch. Ethan could see them clearly now, tall, armored figures with insect-like masks and long-clawed gloves. Every movement was precise, kata, professional and cold. They're not scavengers, Ethan whispered. No, Leora replied. They're hunters. The torch cut through the last of the door, and the intruders stepped inside the archive. Ethan's chest tightened. Every file, every record of that mission was inside. If they took it, the truth would be gone forever. He turned to Leora. We stop them now. Her eyes locked on his, measuring him. Then she gave a short nod. They moved quickly, Ethan taking the left passage to flank them, while Leora stayed on the right. The air was tense, each step silent, every muscle ready. When the first intruder bent over the console to extract a data core, Ethan stepped forward, weapon raised. Stop, he called, his voice hard. The masked figure turned slowly, head tilting at an unnatural angle. For a moment, no one moved. Then the intruder lunged faster than Ethan expected. He fired, the shot hitting the figure's shoulder, making it stumble back with a sharp hiss. Leora was already moving, her blade flashing in the dim light. The second intruder raised a weapon, but she struck first, disarming it with a swift, brutal twist. The fight was quick, but fierce. Ethan's body ached with every movement. But adrenaline kept him going. One intruder fell, weapon clattering to the floor, the other retreating toward the exit. He's getting away, Ethan called. Leora threw a small disc after the retreating figure. It detonated in a burst of electricity, sending the intruder stumbling, but not stopping him. They couldn't chase without leaving the archive unguarded. Ethan stood over the fallen intruder, pulling off the cracked mask. Beneath it was a pale, scarred face with eyes like shards of glass, eyes that were all too familiar. Ethan's breath caught. I've seen him before, he whispered. Leora's expression was unreadable. Yes, she said softly, on the day you fell. The truth was no longer a shadow. It was a living threat, still hunting them, And Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The archive room was silent except for the faint hum of the old data cores. Ethan stood over the fallen intruder, his mind racing with recognition he couldn't fully place. The man's pale, scarred face and sharp, glass-like eyes burned in two. His memory, he had seen those eyes before, through the chaos of fire and smoke 20 years ago. Leora crouched beside the unconscious figure, quickly binding his wrists with a thin cable that tightened with every movement. Her hands moved with the precision of someone who had done this many times before. "We don't have much time," she said quietly. "The other one will warn whoever sent them." Ethan's eyes shifted to the shattered door of the archive. If they had cut through this much metal without slowing down, they were determined. "What exactly are they after?" he asked, his voice low but sharp. Leora's gaze flicked to the shelves of glowing data cores, the mission records, and maybe you. Her words made Ethan's stomach knot. "Why me?" he pressed. "Because you're the only one alive." "Who knows the location of what we were carrying?" she said, her voice steady. Ethan frowned. "You mean the thing you said could change the balance of power?" Leora nodded once. "The crystal." Before he could respond, the station's lights flickered again, a sign of power draw from the docking bay. Ethan's pulse quickened, the other ones calling for backup. Leora was already moving toward the control console, her fingers flying over the keys. She sealed the outer hangar doors, but her expression tightened. Too late, a signal. "Got out," the bound intruder stirred, letting out a guttural hiss that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Leora's eyes narrowed. "You have one chance to tell us who sent you," she said in a low, cold tone. The man laughed a dry, broken sound and spoke in a language Ethan didn't recognize, but Leora did. And her grip on her weapon tightened instantly. "What did he say?" Ethan asked. She met his eyes. He said, "The hunt is not over. We always finish what we start." Ethan stepped closer to the prisoner. "Then tell me, were you there 20 years ago? Did you attack my ship?" The intruder's smile widened slightly, but he said nothing. Leora leaned in, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Answer him, or you'll never leave this station." The man's eyes flicked toward her, cold and unyielding, and then to Ethan. "You should have stayed asleep," he said in broken standard. Before they could press him further, a sudden rumble shook the station. Ethan grabbed the wall for balance. What was that? Leora checked the console, her eyes darkened, docking clamps disengaging. Someone's trying to break in from the lower bay. They moved quickly, dragging the prisoner with them. The maintenance tunnels were narrow, the metal creaking. Under their weight, Ethan's legs burned with every step, but he pushed through. When they reached the lower observation port, his stomach sank. A small black ship was clamped to the underside of the station, its surface bristling with weapons. "That's not a scout," he muttered. "No," Leora agreed. "That's a strike craft." The sound of cutting torches echoed up through the metal floor. "They're coming in," Ethan said. Leora pulled him back from the edge. "We can't hold them here. We have to move toward the central hub and the prisoner." He asked, "He comes with us. If he's alive, they might not destroy the station." They made their way toward the hub, the prisoner stumbling between them. The corridors grew darker as power diverted to emergency systems. Ethan's mind kept flashing to the crystal Leora had mentioned. He couldn't remember ever seeing it, but something deep inside told him it was real. And it was dangerous. When they reached the hub, Leora locked the doors and activated the internal defense turrets. Ethan checked the prisoner's binding still tight and then leaned over the main console. Schematic of the station glowed on the display. "There," he said, pointing to a blinking red section. "Hey, that's where they're cutting." Through Leora nodded. "Then that's where we make our stand." Ethan looked at her. "You've been here alone for 20 years. Why keep fighting now?" She met his gaze with quiet resolve. "Because you're awake. And because if they get what they came for, no world will be safe. The words hit him harder than he expected. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about stopping something far bigger than the both of them. The first explosion rattled the hub doors. Ethan gripped his weapon tighter. Leora stepping into position beside him. The prisoner remained silent. Though his eyes gleamed with something close to satisfaction, the second blast tore the outer seal, smoke filling the entryway through the haze. 3 figures stepped inside, their armor gleaming black under the flickering lights. "Hold," Leora whispered. They waited until the intruders crossed the threshold before she triggered the defense turrets. Bolts of energy lit up the room, forcing the attackers to dive for cover. Ethan fired, hitting one square in the chest and sending him sprawling. Another hurled a concussive grenade, the blast throwing Ethan hard against the wall. Pain flared in his side, but he forced himself up. The fight raged in the cramped space. Leora's movements sharp and lethal. 2 attackers fell, but the last one grabbed the prisoner and pulled him toward the open hatch. "They're taking him," Ethan shouted. Leora lunged, but the hatch sealed before she could reach it. Silence followed, broken only by the hum of failing power conduits. Ethan looked at her. "They'll come back." "Yes," she said, breathing hard. "And next time, they'll bring more." In the dim light, Ethan made a decision. The past could wait. Right now, they had to prepare for the war that had already begun. The hum of the failing power conduits faded into the background. Ethan leaned against the wall, catching his breath. The fight still echoing in his mind. The prisoner was gone, and with him, perhaps the only easy way to get answers. Leora stood nearby, her breathing slow but steady. Her eyes locked on the sealed hatch where the intruder had escaped. "They took him for a reason," Ethan said quietly. "Yes," Leora replied. "And I think I know why." She moved toward a small panel on the far wall. Hidden under layers of dust, her fingers slid over the edges. Finding a concealed latch, with a faint click, the panel popped open, revealing a narrow compartment inside. Ethan stepped closer. His curiosity piqued. "What is that?" he asked. Instead of answering, Leora reached in and pulled out a sealed metal box. It was no larger than a standard supply crate, but it looked old, its surface marked with intricate alien patterns that shimmered faintly under the dim light. The patterns seemed to shift slightly when he looked at them too long. "This," she said, "is why you were attacked 20 years ago." Ethan stared at it, his mind racing. "I've never seen it before." He said slowly, "You carried it," Leora replied. "But you didn't know it at the time." She set the box on the table in the center of the room, the metal ringing softly against the surface. Ethan noticed a thin layer of frost around its edges, as though it had been frozen for decades. "What's inside?" he asked. Leora's eyes darkened. "Something called the Heart of Vera." Ethan frowned. "That's just a story." "A myth." "It was a myth," Leora said. "Until they found it." She ran her fingers along the edge of the box, and it responded with a soft glow. The patterns shifted, forming a sequence of symbols that pulsed in slow rhythm. Ethan felt a strange pull in his chest just looking at it. "It's alive," he murmured. "In a way," Leora replied. "It holds a fragment of pure energy, not like any power source in the galaxy." Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "With it, a single ship could power an entire fleet indefinitely, or destroy a planet in seconds." Ethan's stomach tightened. "And you kept it here? On this abandoned station? Where better to hide something everyone is looking for?" she asked, her tone calm but sharp. He rubbed his temples, trying to process it all these years. "You stayed not just for me, but for this." Leora's gaze softened slightly. "I stayed because of a promise." "A promise?" he repeated. "Yes," she said quietly, "before the mission. You told me if something happened to you, I was to protect both you and the heart." no matter the cost. Ethan blinked. The memory, faint but real, flashes of the mission briefing. The weight of responsibility he hadn't fully understood back then. "I didn't think it would come to this," he said, his voice low. "Neither did I," she admitted. "But now they know where it is." The faint rumble of distant movement interrupted their conversation. Ethan turned toward the sound. "They're still on the station." Leora shook her head. "No, that's them leaving." For now, Ethan's jaw clenched. "Then they'll be back with more." He looked down at the glowing box, its light reflecting in his eyes. "What if we just destroy it?" I asked. Leora's eyes widened. "You don't destroy something like this, Ethan. You can only control it. Or let it fall into the wrong hands." The words settled between them like a heavy weight. He stepped back from the table, pacing slowly. "If this thing is that dangerous, we can't keep it here. Especially not with them closing in." "Agreed," Leora said, "but moving it will be dangerous. It emits an energy signature they can track." Ethan stopped pacing, his mind already forming a plan. "Then we need to move it somewhere they can't follow, or somewhere they'll regret." Following, Leora raised an eyebrow. "And where would that be?" "The old relay outpost near the gas giant," he said. "Its storms block all scans, and it's abandoned." She considered it for a moment, then gave a short nod. "It's risky. But so is staying here." They both turned to the box again. The faint hum inside it almost like a heartbeat. Leora reached for the release mechanism, but paused, looking at him once it's open. "It can't be closed again without the proper seal. Are you ready for that?" Ethan's throat felt dry, but he nodded with a smooth motion. Leora pressed the sequence, and the box unfolded silently inside. Resting in a cradle of silver metal was a crystal unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It was translucent, but alive with swirling light, colors shifting like liquid fire. The air around it seemed warmer. Heavier. Ethan took a step closer, feeling the faint vibration on the floor under his boots. "It's beautiful," he said softly. "It's deadly," Leora corrected, before they could say more. The station's proximity alarm blared. Ethan spun toward the console, the screen flashing red, multiple ships inbound. "They didn't waste time," he muttered. Leora's voice was calm but firm. "Then we have no choice. We take the heart and leave now." Ethan reached for the box, but as his hands touched the metal, the crystal inside pulsed once, twice, and then a deep, resonating hum filled the room. Leora's eyes widened. "It knows you," she whispered. "What do you mean it knows me?" he asked. "The heart chooses who can carry it," she said, "and it just chose you." Ethan's grip tightened, the weight of the decision settling over him. The enemy was coming. The heart was awake, and there was no turning back now. The heart of Vera pulsed in Ethan's hands like it was alive. Its swirling colors reflected in his eyes, and for a brief moment, the rest of the station faded away. Then the alarms dragged him back to reality. Red lights flashing, sirens howling through the corridors. Multiple ships were closing in fast, their signals marked with the same enemy encryption from 20 years ago. "They're here," Ethan said, his voice firm but calm. Leora was already moving, strapping on her gear and grabbing a small weapons case from the wall. "We get to the hangar, launch the shuttle, and head for the relay outpost," she said. "No detours, no stops." Ethan nodded, but his mind was already running through possibilities. "They'll expect us to run straight for the outpost," he warned. "They'll expect us to die here," she replied, without looking back. The floor trembled as the first boarding clamps locked onto the station. Ethan tightened his grip on the heart's container, feeling its faint vibration through the metal. It almost felt like it was aware of what was happening. "Stay close to me," Leora said, stepping toward the door. Ethan managed a faint smirk. "Pretty sure I should be saying that to you." They moved quickly through the dim corridors, emergency lights casting long shadows. Ethan's legs still ached from disuse, but adrenaline pushed him forward. Every intersection brought the echo of boots on metal enemy boarding parties spreading through the station. Leora's eyes flicked to each side corridor, her weapon ready when a shadow moved ahead. She didn't hesitate one clean shot. And the figure collapsed. "They're blocking the main route to the hangar," she said, scanning her wrist display. "Then we take the service lift," Ethan replied, pointing to a hatch on the right. The narrow shaft smelled of rust and ozone. The old lift platform barely big enough for both of them. Leora hit the controls and the platform began its slow descent. Above them, distant shouts echoed, followed by the metallic hiss of doors opening. Halfway down, the lift jerked violently. "They're overriding the controls," Leora snapped. Ethan glanced down. They were still 3 levels up from the hangar. "Then we jump," he said. Before she could argue, he stepped off the platform, landing hard on the grated floor below. The jolt sent pain shooting through his legs, but he stayed upright. Leora landed beside him with far more grace. "You're reckless," she said. 20 years in bed. I've got a lot to make up for," he replied. They ran. The hangar doors finally coming into view. But as they approached, a squad of black-armored intruders stepped into their path. Weapons raised, Ethan ducked behind. A support pillar, Leora sliding into cover opposite him. The air filled with a hiss and crack of energy fire. Bolts slamming into metal around them. Ethan risked a glance and returned fire. Dropping one of the attackers, Leora moved like lightning, weaving between cover and striking with precise, deadly shots. "Keep them busy," she called. Ethan leaned out and fired again, forcing the squad to retreat toward the corner of the hangar. In the chaos, Leora activated the hangar's defense cannons. Their heavy thud echoing through the bay, the remaining intruders scattered. And Leora grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward the shuttle. The small craft sat in the center of the hangar, its hull scuffed but intact. Ethan rushed up the ramp, setting the hearts container into a secured cradle near the co-pilot's seat. Leora sealed the hatch behind them and sprinted to the pilot's chair. The shuttle's engines roared to life, shaking the deck beneath them through the forward screen. The station's outer doors began to open just as another enemy ship appeared outside. "Blocking their escape, they're trying to trap us," Ethan said. "Not if I can help it," Leora replied, her hands flying over the controls. She dove the shuttle forward, engines straining, then banked hard to the right. Skimming past the enemy ship's hull, alarms blared as a barrage of plasma fire streaked past them. Some shots grazing their shields, their locking missiles. Ethan warned. Leora's jaw tightened. "Then we go where missiles don't." She turned the shuttle sharply, plunging into the thick debris field surrounding the station. Chunks of broken satellites and shattered ship hulls drifted past. Spinning slowly in the void, the enemy followed, but the tight spaces and sudden turns forced them to slow. Ethan's hands gripped the seat as the shuttle twisted between fragments of metal the size of buildings. The heart pulsed beside him, its glow steady. "You sure this is safe?" he asked. "No," Leora said, "but it's better than being dead." One of the pursuing ships clipped a jagged piece of debris, spinning out of control before exploding into a brilliant fireball. The blast lit the cockpit, and Leora used the moment to dive deeper into the field. After a tense minute, the enemy signals began to fade. "They're pulling back," Ethan said with relief. "For now," she replied. They broke free of the debris field, the gas giant looming ahead, its swirling storms casting massive shadows. "That's our cover," Leora said, steering toward the storm belt. The heart pulsed again, stronger this time, and Ethan could feel its warmth through the container. "It's like it knows where we're going," he murmured. "Or it knows what's coming," Leora said quietly. As the shuttle slipped into the gas giant's storm, lightning flashed across the clouds. The sensors went nearly blind, the interference thick and wild. Leora smiled faintly. Now, they can't track us. Ethan sat back. The adrenaline finally easing, but deep inside, he knew this was just a pause, not the end the heart had chosen. Him, the enemy, knew it, and sooner or later, they would return. When they did, Ethan planned to be ready. The shuttle drifted through the gas giant's turbulent clouds. Lightning flashing in blinding arcs outside, inside the cockpit. Only the faint hum of the heart of Vera broke the silence. Ethan sat with the container in his lap, feeling its warmth seep through the metal. The longer he held it, the more it seemed alive, its pulses almost matching his heartbeat. Leora's hands rested on the controls, her eyes scanning the distorted readings on the flickering display. "We've lost them for now," she said, her voice steady but quiet. Ethan looked at her. "For now isn't enough." Her gaze shifted to him. "Then we make a choice. One that decides not just our future, but the future of every world out there." The words settled between them like the weight of the storms outside. Ethan turned back to the heart, its swirling colors dancing like liquid fire. "What if we hide it somewhere they'll never find it?" he asked. "They'll keep searching," she replied. "And they'll tear apart every planet, every station, every colony until they do." He exhaled slowly. "Then maybe we destroy it." Leora's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't dismiss the idea. "It can be destroyed," she admitted, "but it would take more energy than most fleets can produce. And it might tear apart everything around it when it goes." Ethan met her gaze. "Then it's not just a choice about keeping it or losing it. It's about who we trust with it." The comms panel crackled suddenly, pulling their attention. A faint voice broke through the static human. Desperate. "This is Captain Rains of the Free Colony Fleet. We received your signal. If you're out there, respond." Ethan's pulse quickened. "They answered my call." Leora's jaw tightened. "Help comes with questions. And questions lead to the heart." Ethan glanced back at her. "If we join them, we might finally have allies strong enough to fight back. Or they might take the heart for themselves," she countered. Silence stretched for a moment, broken only by the crackle of distant thunder outside. Finally, Ethan leaned forward, activating the comms. "This is Ethan Cole. I'm alive, and I'm not alone." There was a pause. Then the voice returned, steadier this time. "Cole, we thought you were dead." "Not dead," Ethan said, his eyes flicking to Leora. "Just waiting." Coordinates were exchanged, but Leora's expression never softened. "They'll want to see what we're carrying," she said once the channel went silent. "Then we show them." "Under our terms," Ethan replied. They steered out of the gas giant's shadow hours later, the storms fading behind them. In the distance, a formation of ships emerged, human designs, patched together but armed and ready. The lead vessel turned toward them, engines glowing bright as the shuttle docked. Ethan felt the heart's pulse quicken in his hands. It was as if it knew the moment was important. They stepped out into the docking bay, greeted by armed soldiers and a tall, broad-shouldered man with sharp eyes. "Captain Rains." 20 years, Rains said, looking Ethan over. "And you show up carrying the one thing that could save or destroy us all." Ethan didn't flinch. "Then you know why I can't." "Just hand it over." Rain's gaze flicked to Leora, then to the container. "You think you can keep it safe? From them?" Ethan's voice was steady. "No. But we can keep it safe together." The captain studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "You'll have to prove that later in the fleet's strategy chamber." The three of them stood over a hollow map of the sector. Red markers showed the spread of enemy ships, each one pushing deeper into human space. "They're moving faster than we thought," Rain said. "If they get their hands on the heart, it's over." Ethan set the container on the table, its glow casting soft light over their faces. "Then we don't let them," he said. "But we also don't hide. We use it." Leora's head turned sharply. "Use it?" You know what that means? Ethan met her gaze. Yes, it means fighting back, giving them a reason to fear coming near human space again. The captain leaned on the table. If we activate the heart, even briefly, it could power every ship in this fleet beyond its limits and draw every enemy within 100 systems straight to us. Leora added. Ethan's eyes hardened. Then we end it in one fight. Silence fell again. The storm outside replaced by the tension inside. Finally, Rain straightened. If we do this, there's no retreat, no second chance. Ethan's voice was calm. I've already lost 20 years. I'm not losing another day. The decision was made. Preparations began immediately. The heart connected to the fleet's power core under Ethan's watchful eye. The moment it touched the interface, the entire ship thrummed with new energy. Lights brightening, systems humming with impossible power. On the eve of battle, Leora found Ethan standing in the observation bay. Staring at the stars, you know? You might not live through this, she said quietly. He glanced at her. A faint smile touching his lips. Neither might you. But you waited for me anyway. Her eyes softened. And I'd wait again the next day. The enemy fleet arrived, a wall of dark metal blotting out the stars. The humans met them head-on, the heart blazing at the core of their formation. Energy surged through every weapon, every engine, every shield for the first time in decades. Humanity wasn't running. They were charging as the first shots lit up the void. Ethan stood beside Leora on the bridge. This is it, he said. She nodded, eyes fixed on the battle ahead. Let's finish what we started. The heart pulsed one last time, brighter than ever, as the future of both their worlds was decided in fire and light.